for quite a few decades, living as a Buddhist monk and teacher. He could see that the time was right and ripe really for a new Buddhist movement in Britain, or in the West, really. He had a big vision. What he knew up till then was the Buddhist Society in London, which was a fairly sort of sedentary affair, where people would talk about Buddhism but would not necessarily practice it. So what he would call, I think he did call that, armchair Buddhism. So he could see the time was right for a new movement, where people would be involved in a dynamic way in actually transforming their own lives through the Dharma. And he didn't really think he was the best person to start this movement. He was more of a study person, more a scholar, and more in a way on his own. He preferred that. I think he wasn't that sort of outgoing in that way. But a bit like with those situations, and maybe you know this, and I know this from my own life, where there's a certain situation that needs a role, and you're just looking around to think, who's going to do this? And you realize, oh, it's me. And he basically just did it. He just started a new movement. So he had a vision for a new movement based on Buddhist practice, not based on just theory. He did, yes. And it became clear, it was interesting because he wasn't like he had a blueprint for this movement to start with. It wasn't like he thought, I'm just going to do it like this and this. It was very much an evolving situation. So he'd give Dharma talks, people became more involved. The first people were ordained in 1967, I think, and so on. But then it wasn't until some years in to this new movement that, looking back, he could see that the FWBO, or Triratna as we know it today, had 4 things to offer to people in the West. And these things, he said, corresponded to our deepest and truest needs. Our deepest and truest needs. The 4 things later reflected in a poem by him called The 4 Gifts, which some of you may be familiar with. The 4 things were a method of personal development, which is what we have been talking at the class in the last few months. This is the 3rd talk on that particular topic. And it's symbolized by the lotus flower. The second one is a vision of human existence, symbolized by Indra's net, which is an interconnectedness. So to realize that none of us are isolated beings, just somewhere. We are all interconnected, deeply so. And the third one was a nucleus of a new society. Like, where do you start? By making a change. Where do you start really changing things? So it's the spiritual community. The spiritual community is where you can start making a change, where people involved in a dynamic way, practicing, working on themselves, change their lives, and by doing so, change the world around them. And the 4th was a blueprint for a new world, or a new society. So to cultivate, to transform the world through active service. So through just being able to give, being able to give talks perhaps, or be involved in a class, as you may be at a center, come to a class. So being active in bringing about that change. So the poem, I will actually read it out for some of you who don't know it. It's called 4 Gifts. It starts, I come to you with 4 gifts, and it ends with, dare you accept them. So, 4 gifts. I come to you with 4 gifts. The first gift is a lotus flower. Do you understand? My second gift is a golden net. Can you recognize it? My third gift is a shepherd's round dance. Do your feet know how to dance? My fourth gift is a garden planted in the wilderness. Could you work there? I come to you with 4 gifts. Dare you accept them? It's a personal invitation, as in ehi passiko. Come and see for yourself. It's an invitation and an encouragement to investigate the Dharma, investigate the teaching. Is it true for you? Buddhism is not based on blind faith or belief, or it has a doctrine that one is asked to adhere to. It cannot be so by its very nature. As in the Calmness Sutra, the Buddha tells the Kalama people, do not believe in something just because it's reported. Do not believe in something because it has been practiced for generations and it's part of a culture. Do not believe something a teacher tells you or authorities tell you, etc. Only go by what is praised by the wise and which you test for yourself and find to be good for you and others. So you have to know who are the wise, but also you need to use your intellect and intuition. Test the teaching in your own experience. Is it true? So the Buddha had a vision of human existence, its potential, and the path for development. It was very practical. So anything in Buddhist doctrine is practical. We can actually use it. We can apply ourselves. It's not something we think, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, I'll believe in that. We can only really believe in anything when our experience bears it out to be true. Yeah, there's many different models within Buddhism and many different lists of things, as you may be familiar with. One particular model you may be familiar with is a wheel of life. Any of you know that? The wheel of life, yeah. Which is a depiction of, in a way, the lower evolution. It's a depiction of how we basically live in cyclical existence, go round and round, because we have a fairly reactive mind and a habitual mind, and basically go from birth to death or from moment to moment in a very habitual pattern. So Bhante called that the lower evolution. It's a bit like we evolve to a certain point. But there is as you also may know, a gap in the wheel of life. There is a gap between feeling and acting, feeling and our response. And that is the step-off point, if you like, for a more creative life, for a more spiral path rather than a circular path. And this is something that is there in every moment. This is something that we can sort of catch every moment. And this is where our meditation practices come in. So the 2 foundation practices that are taught within Triratna, the mindfulness of breathing, which we did before the tea break, and the Metta Bhavana, which is the cultivation of positive emotion, are complementary practices, you could say. And they're samatha practices, and samatha means they are integrating practices. They're on a sort of level to integrate our energies. So when we first start to meditate, or when you first may come along to the center and you feel inspired and it's great, you think this is what I'm going to do, sooner or later there's something that pulls you in a different direction. It might be your career, it might be family, it might be life, whatever is going on. It's a strong pull, and it can be hard to really follow through on a thread that we have found a little beginning of in ourselves. Even when we're quite inspired, we can lose that again. So the mindfulness of breathing in particular is there to help us calm our minds and to integrate our energies, so that our energies are not going in all sorts of different directions, but we can bring them together, and of course then it's stronger, that we know more clearly what's the direction we're taking, where are we going, where are we heading. Sometimes it's interesting how confusing that can still be. So the mindfulness of breathing, and I think of the breath as, breath is like life, isn't it? Breath is life. So breathing is living, literally. No breathing, no life. So to be connected to our breath, or to have our breath as a barometer, or even a searchlight, I sometimes think of it, to just bring our awareness to our actual experience. That is really what we do in the mindfulness of breathing, to bring our awareness to our actual experience and to be with our actual experience. So to let go of the prapancha, the sort of proliferated thoughts that we might have about things, going off on one, which of course we do all the time. But the practice is to keep noticing that that's what we've done, and to keep bringing ourselves back to the body, to the breath, because that is what is real, and that is what is actually always present for us. So the mindfulness breathing can take you all the way to enlightenment, if that is all you choose to practice. But we also have the Metta bhavana, of course, the Metta bhavana, the cultivation of positive emotion. And we need that really quite badly. And it can sometimes be tempting to just, not everyone likes the Metta bhavana. I come across people who don't really like it. I find it difficult to just engage with feelings or emotions. It can be challenging, or maybe a bit too nebulous, or whatever it is. But without positive emotions, we wouldn't get very far. And without positive emotion, it would be really even hard to practice the mindfulness of breathing, because somehow we need that breath, we need that sense of positivity, sense of well-wishing for ourselves and for others. Also in the mindfulness of breathing, it's not just a mechanical practice, it's a practice that in a way brings us alive and brings us more to our experience and alive to our experience. That is really what that does. Now, it's innate in us to want to grow and develop, in all of us. That is just innate, it's just a given, that is just there. We want to grow towards the light, if you like. We want to, it's a natural thing in evolution, perhaps, that's what we have, that's what we are. And it's interesting with the Metta bhavana, it took me a while to realize that it's not actually about other people, which I used to think. I thought it was about other people. Maybe you think that too. Maybe this is new to you. But I had a different experience of it, because I could see that all these people that we bring to mind, either our good friend, a neutral person, the person we find difficult, they act like props. So we must stay in touch with our own connection, our own feeling, our own response towards someone. So if we bring someone to mind who is a friend, who we love, who we care about, we check what our response is in ourselves. It's like there's a sort of opening, a softening of the heart, a willingness, a going towards. Whereas with the opposite, if we have someone we find difficult, we can just sense maybe a closing, a tightening, a sort of not really wanting to go there sort of feeling. So is it about these people? Well, eventually it will of course affect them if we keep practicing. But the actual Metta Bhavana is really about our response to the world, our response to others. How can we respond in a way that is more open-hearted, that is not close-fisted but open-handed? How can we do that? And through practicing the Metta Bhavana, we just get, in a way, better at this. We get better at it because we can connect with a sense of metta, which isn't just a sense of well-wishing, but it's a deeper emotion, I would say. That is in all of us. That's the other thing. It's just already there. It's already there. We don't really have to manufacture it. We don't have to kind of bring it out of a stone, although it may feel like that sometimes. It's just needing to abide with what's there, however little, in terms of positive emotion, that we can then just dwell on and abide with. That will, because we pay attention to it, we bring awareness to it, it will grow, it will develop, because that is what awareness does. Things that we dwell on, we become. So Sangharakshita said a beautiful thing actually in that Brighton lecture that Ratnaprabha was at. He said, we want to achieve in time what we are in eternity. So we want to achieve in time what we are in eternity, meaning we've kind of forgotten who we are. We've kind of lost connection with that being that is also us or part of us, that is transcendental. And through practice, through meditation, through also the supportive or practices like ethics, appreciation of the arts and nature, we find our way back to that in ourselves that is also connected, is also transcendental. And it's not that we already are, this is always the thing. It's not that we already are, we still have to kind of do the work. But it's good to remember that we want to achieve in time, so within our lifetime or within actual time in this world, what we already are in eternity. I thought it was a beautiful thing. And as I said, we want to grow, we want to develop. It's innate in us. It is not something we need to, even if we feel we don't, we do. Yes. Now I remember with the Metta Bhavana on a very first retreat I was on some decades ago now, where I found it difficult to feel that sort of sense of metta for someone. And in fact, there was someone on the retreat who really irritated me. She couldn't help it. She was just being herself. But, there was a projection of me onto her that I didn't like. Just didn't like her. Quite straightforward, didn't like her. And I spent a retreat just sort of trying to avoid her a little bit. And then one evening, there was a puja, and she came up to the shrine to make an offering. And I suddenly found myself in floods of tears, because suddenly something about her really deeply moved me. Was really beautiful, and I hadn't seen that before. And it was just that I could see, in retrospect, with hindsight, that she was quite a sort of vulnerable person and quite open. And I was, at the time, quite the opposite. I was quite reserved, quite kind of closed. and not really that trusting. And somehow that was difficult for me to sort of see that just someone being like that I found impossible to be at the time. But it was a breakthrough for me to have that experience, because I could then see that it was something, that was the thing for me to work on. You see, that was in terms of Metta Bhavana, I could sort of see that was for me to work on, that for me it was the thing to have more confidence in my vulnerability, or take a few more risks to actually be open and share things with others. That was a good experience. So I think the Metta Bhavana also leads the way, as it were, to more devotion, to more devotional practices. And devotional practice, of course, that we do at the center is the Puja, sevenfold Puja, threefold Puja. And the sevenfold Puja, the verses are taken from the Bodhicattva, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life by Shantideva, a very ancient writing, actually. And I don't know if you've done pujas, or if you like pujas, or don't like them, or feel quite indifferent about them. I've been through all of that. I didn't used to sort of particularly like them, but I did them anyway because I was on retreat, so I was just going to these pujas night after night after night. And just, and not really feeling moved by it or touched by it. But I found that through doing it anyway, it started to have an effect on me. And also it mattered on what I brought to it in terms of how I was. So it mattered what I brought to it. But that experience I had all these years ago with this person who I didn't like, and then who sort of, in a way, by being herself, dissolved my defense mechanism, actually. That's what happened. I could also really see that in pujas, that was, a bit of me didn't think I was a very devotional person, really. I'm just not that type. It's just not me. I was just not brought up that way. Come from a very sort of Dutch Protestant background. We didn't do things like that. So that wasn't part of my experience. But also devotion, or being a devotional type, I would say, resides in all of us. I've really come to see that. And it may be quite dormant in some of us, or maybe it's quite alive in you, I don't know, in some of you, or alive sometimes and not another time. But doing pujas, and that's the other practice, of course, we have, is can be a very heart-opening experience. I think I used to think that I had to feel a certain way, or I had to be a certain way, or when I might make an offering to the shrine, I had to feel I had all sorts of ideas about what it should be like. And of course that took me away from my actual experience, like what I actually felt, and I wasn't able to feel my actual experience because I wasn't feeling what I should be feeling. That may be familiar to you. I then found that certain lines in the puja suddenly would get me. Like I might go through the whole thing. And I tell you what, the line is in the puja that always gets me now. I can go through the whole puja. There's one line in particular. It's the going for refuge verse that starts with, "This very day I go for my refuge." And every time I hear that, even when I say it now, something in me goes like, yes, this very day. Not just this very day, this very moment, now. It feels very, like it brings me into the present. It really brings me into, this is it. Now I have this choice. I have this choice now in terms of how I act, how I respond. And coming back to the wheel of life, that's that little gap every time. how I respond to what life throws up for me. This very moment, I go for my refuge. I choose a creative response. I choose a kind response if I'm aware enough to do that. And of course, I'm not always. Yeah, I think it's interesting with devotion. I was thinking of the story of the Buddha after he was enlightened. He was just freshly enlightened, as it were. And his experience was such that he just didn't know if he could really communicate this to anyone, if anyone would be able to understand what it meant. So he thought he'd go and see his old pals, as it were, who he was practicing with before he went off to do his own thing. So he went into the area where they were still practicing. I don't know if there was asceticism that they were into, because of course he tried all that, asceticism, and decided, as you probably know, that the middle way was the best way. Anyway, he goes back to this place and they see him coming from a distance, and they think, oh, they say to each other, here comes Gautama, the slacker, the softy, basically, the one who gave up and went off, do his own thing. We're just going to ignore him. And they just go about his thing. And as the Buddha approaches, and of course they don't know he is a Buddha at the time, as he approaches, as he comes closer, something in them changes, because they suddenly recognize there's something about him that is infinitely greater than they are. And without even talking to each other, they then rush to offer him a seat, offer him food, offer him some drink, offer him hospitality. And I think of that particular story as an example of how devotion is in all of us, when it's touched by someone like that. And that can, and in this case it was the Buddha, it's like they couldn't help themselves. They just had to. They just wanted to do the best for him that was possible. So in terms of practices, we have the samatha practices. We interact with these, the mindfulness breathing, the metta bhavana. We have devotional practices, the pujas that we do. Now there are also vipassana practices, so more insight practices that are practiced within the order mainly, but not all of it. And part of those practices can be a sadhana practice where you visualize a transcendental figure. It could be the Buddha, it could be green Tara, or any such figure that represents qualities that we all have in us, that is already there. The potential is already there. And by dwelling on these figures, we can alight, as it were, these qualities in us and grow towards it. It's not like it's outside of us. It's not like it's outside of us. There's some of it that is in us, and that's why we respond. And devotion comes out of a need in us to look up to and aspire to something that's greater. That is also innate in us, as part of the impetus to grow and develop. And transcendental figures are, of course, very good for that. So that's the difference between samatha and vipassana practices. And I want to say something about vipassana practices, like insight practices, that sometimes are practiced but on their own, where where there is a strong desire to gain insight, to understand. But the word of kind of caution here is that unless we have a good basis of metta, it's it has risks to get into those kind of practices. We need a very strong, solid basis of metta. We need a strong basis of it. And to come back to that, it's really fundamental to develop positive emotions. It's really fundamental to have that as a basis for our practice. Because if we cannot have a sense of metta for ourselves at all times, or at the best of times, it's very hard to actually feel that towards someone else. We cannot leave ourselves out of the picture in that way. It's not possible, because we are all interconnected, and it's not like there's me here and there's you there. It has an effect. So important to have metta for ourselves. So we need a sense of calm, mindfulness, and a sense of positive emotion, metta, really as a foundation to do more insight practices, so that we don't get lost in, so that we have something in a way to hold it. I think that's what it is. It's almost like we need that to hold. If we do get a strong insight, or even a small insight, it can really rock us. It can really rock our world. It can really unsettle us, actually. And if we don't have enough metta there, if we don't have enough kindness as a basis, as a foundation, that can sometimes not be so good. It can come to bite you on the bum, as they say. So I would end with saying that developing calm in today's world and developing positive emotion is, I would say, the most important and worthwhile thing we can do in today's world. And that's probably always true, but somehow I feel it's particularly true now, that whatever our leanings are in any ways, our opinions about whatever is going on in the world, the way for us to have an effect on the world and actually transform the world, transform the world around us, that's the only place we can start, is to develop positive emotions and have a calm mind, so we have a perspective on what happens around us. And we can all do that, but we can only start from where we are, and we all know where we are. We have to be honest about that, and we can all develop in a way shine a light on the positive emotion that's already present for us in our lives, in ourselves. Thank you.